Howdy folks, welcome back to BIG Photography. This is Ben and this is part 2 of our beauty portrait fine art retouch in Affinity Photo. If you haven't watched part 1, I would suggest doing that because we actually did quite a bit of work in part 1. Just for a quick recap, let me show you the before. So the first thing we did is a little quick cleanup where we just kind of removed some of these little scratches, nicks and stuff like that, the veins in the eyes, fix some of the eyebrows a little bit. Then that gave us a nice start so that we can go into our main step, which was dodge and burn. And here we used 2 curved layers to lighten and darken certain parts of the skin to really make the skin look nice and smooth, all while preserving this wonderful skin texture. And I also showed you that you can use dodge and burn not just on skin, but also on the clothes. So you can see here we had a very strong shadow from her bra underneath. And by using dodge and burn, we were able to lighten up a little bit. Now we couldn't do it all the way because we are at the limit of our curve. So what I went ahead and did after the video is I created a separate dodge and burn layer where I could lighten it even more. So you can see there, it's now pretty much all gone and we didn't do any kind of clone stamping or retouching. That was all corrected just using dodge and burn, and before and after you can see. So it just kind of gets rid of that distracting shadow she's got under her shirt and kind of just smooths everything out to get a nice clean look. Alrighty, so with all that said, let's go ahead and move on to part 2. And in this video, what we're going to be doing is 2 things. And one thing I get frequently asked about, and that is skin tone and skin tone correction. In this one specifically, skin tone inconsistencies and how to fix them and how to even them out. And then we are going to do some contouring using dodge and burn. So let's just go ahead and jump right in, shall we? So skin tone inconsistencies, what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is, if we look at this image here, you'll notice that certain parts of her face, especially the dark areas, are a little bit less saturated than other parts of her face. Specifically here in the temple, you can see this area here, it's almost kind of a grayish, it's almost kind of a grayish color around here. There's even some kind of gray down here. This shadow part of the nose is a little less saturated, and down here as well. And so what we want to do is we want to try to put some color into that so it all kind of looks nice and even. So how are we going to do that? Pretty simple actually, is we are going to use a new layer and we are going to use the color blend mode to basically paint skin color into those low saturated areas. So first, let's go ahead and label this new layer, call it skin tone. Okay. And what I like to do here is using my eyedropper tool, and we're going to set this to about let's say average of 17 by 17 area. And I want to look for an area of skin tone that I like, that I would like to carry over into those low saturated areas. So I'm going to pick somewhere around here on the forehead. I kind of like that. I'm going to click on that, and that's going to load up that color for my paintbrush. Now I'm going to go to my paintbrush, and let me just go ahead and show you what this does actually. So if I paint with a normal full flow everything brush, if I paint that area I selected at, you don't really see any difference at all. But when I start painting over other areas, then you're going to start to see that color being put in. Like so. Now, of course, this looks really overdone, but this is going to showing you what it does. And then what we can do now is, if we wanted, we can just come over here and reduce the opacity and kind of inject a little bit of color in there. But we want to be a bit more precise. So I'll go ahead and undo all that. And we're going to do the same thing, but this time just using a low flow paintbrush. That way we can just kind of slowly paint in those specific areas and we have a lot more control. So zooming in over here on the forehead, these areas under the eyebrows and around the temple are specifically very gray and very dark. I'm just going to start painting with my brush over that, like so. And maybe even up here in the forehead a little bit. Get a little bit of that grayness out. And let's do this temple area here. And we have this patch of gray that's kind of coming down her cheek. There's a bit on here in the eye. It might be a bit hard to see on YouTube. I'm going to show you the before after in a second. I think you will see a definite difference. Okay, so let me just go ahead and do this for now. Alrighty, so let me go ahead and turn this off. If I turn it off, you can see that we've eliminated that kind of gray color. And if we feel we went a bit too far in certain areas, we can always slightly erase it, I guess, or make a mask. Or after we've done everything, we can just go ahead and lower the opacity to kind of get a nice smooth blend of what we think looks best. So if you see, I'm going to go ahead and continue. We got a few more areas here, like I mentioned over here on the nose. And at any time, we can always choose a different color. Because I picked from this light area down here, maybe I'm going to go ahead and sample from, say, around here, get a little bit of a lighter color, and then just do the same thing, kind of paint in some of that flesh color on this dark shadow area of the nose. That's just going to kind of get rid of a little bit of that grayness and injects some red into it. So this is the after, that's the before. It's probably very subtle to see, but I think you can see that subtle difference. If we look at just the layer by itself, you can see, because I am painting with a low flow brush, my brush strokes are very faint and very small. This gives me more control to paint harder over low saturated areas and maybe just kind of blend it in nicely. So maybe what else we got going down here? Maybe this area here on her dimple. Maybe I'm going to want to pick a new color, maybe somewhere closer to that area, and just kind of paint that in like so. And maybe this kind of gray area as well. Also, we've got some grayness happening here on the cheek. The chin. Let's go ahead and just maybe grab a color from down here, kind of paint that in a bit like that. This is also a great way to remove some color inconsistencies as well. Now, I think this is very difficult to see, but there's a little bit of redness just above the lip. I'm going to go ahead and maybe grab the color right above here and just see if I can kind of paint out that redness, maybe grabbing the color from here. And I think it's going to be extremely difficult to see on YouTube. There's a little bit of redness here above her lip. I'm going to try to get rid of that. Let me see. Yeah, it's very subtle. I can see it on my monitor, but it's very subtle. But I think you can definitely see we've definitely added some color into this shadow area of her chin. But if I turn it off and turn it on, I think you can definitely see we've put some color back in. And that just makes the image look a lot more uniform. What else do we got? We got some interesting saturation things happening here where this is kind of gray and then this area is actually very red. And the cool thing about the color blend mode is that it affects the hue, but it also affects the saturation. So if I pick a color like this, which is kind of mediumly saturated, you can tell up here by the color wheel, it's like right in the middle. You can see the saturation level is at basically 33%. By painting over that red area, it's going to lower the saturation. And by painting over the gray area, it's going to basically raise the saturation to our color level, if that makes any sense. Where I guess another blend mode some people do use is the hue blend mode, but with the hue blend mode does not affect saturation at all. And because we specifically want to target areas of low saturation, that hue blend mode is preserving the saturation level underneath, and we don't want to do that. We want to adjust it. So that's why we're using the color blend mode, because we want to adjust the saturation of the color underneath. So I take this off and on. You can kind of see we've basically taken care of some of that gray and put a little bit of color in there. And it's kind of, if I maybe get a lighter color, maybe kind of lighten this area up, and it's kind of gotten rid of that little weird kind of red, gray, red transition we had before. Here you can see it's very saturated here, medium kind of gray, and then gets really red and then comes into the white area. By using our color blend mode, we can kind of blend that in a bit more. Again, if it's a little too much, we can either make a mask. I'm just going to do a low flow eraser and just kind of maybe, oops, that was a bit too harsh, a low flow eraser. And maybe just kind of come in and try to maybe just erase it a little bit just to get it looking nice. Okay, that looks good. And don't forget, we have other areas in the body, for example. A lot of times in these dark shadow areas can get very saturated. We have a kind of kicker rim light here, and this is kind of desaturated her skin, so we can put some saturation back in there. And doing the exact same thing with a paintbrush, I'm going to grab a color from about right here, and we're just going to put a little bit of saturation in there. It's natural for skin that's extremely being hard lit to lose saturation and look kind of white. So if we paint it all and make it look one color, it might look a little bit phony. So I don't want to go too overboard there. And right here, I'm going to go ahead and grab from this area and just kind of try to lower the saturation down here. and maybe here in the cleavage area just a tad, and on this side maybe just lower that saturation. And all it's going to do is just kind of bring the skin tone looking a bit more uniform and not having areas of kind of dark, or sorry, gray, undersaturated areas, and just kind of get it looking a little more uniform. We can see there's a little bit of a red stripe almost between the shadow and the highlight, and so maybe we can try to use this little light area right at the height of her nose and maybe try to reduce the saturation of that red line. I think that just does it just a little bit. Very subtle, but you can see that we have basically fixed those luminosity differences in her face. So that's definitely one way that you can use. And then now I look at it, I might want to actually drop the opacity down just a little bit, just to kind of get a nicer blend in, something like maybe 80%. And I think that looks really good. We've basically brought a lot more uniform color and saturation into her skin, and great. Yeah, perfect. All right, let's move on. So now what I want to do is we want to start doing some contouring. So if you've used my macro, you should already have a contouring D&B group, and this is just basically just like dodge and burn. It's a dodge curve and a burn curve so that we can make things lighter and darker. So I'm going to go ahead and get a white paintbrush, and what we want to do is we want to kind of accentuate the highlight areas and deepen the shadow areas to kind of bring out some more depth. So a great example and a great use of this is on the collarbone, the clavicle over here. If we take our white low flow brush and painting on our contour dodge, we can kind of like just paint a little bit over the collarbone to kind of make it stand out a bit. You can see we've kind of made it pop a little bit, like so. So any place that has highlights, we can kind of accentuate them, like here on the shoulder, the edge of the shoulders, down the arm, maybe down here, just on the chest area a little bit, and even over here. Especially adding a highlight across is going to kind of give the impression of just like rounder, fuller breasts, and that's just going to look more, I don't know, artistic, and I don't think anybody's going to complain about that. Maybe down here in the arm. Now we can look to the face. Sometimes I like to go over the lips. That's just going to add, make the lips a little brighter, maybe add some sheen to the lips like that. Let's see if that did anything. Just a little bit, just a little bit. And maybe especially over this kind of T-zone area, the nose, into the forehead, and then maybe a bit on the cheeks. And maybe we can even do the chin a little bit, brighten up the chin. And if we wanted, we could also come in here and just kind of brighten up this shadow side of her face, just like that. And you can see there, just by adding those cool little highlights, we've kind of created some more depth to the image. We've made it really kind of stand out and really kind of give it a dynamic look. So now we're going to move on to our contour burn, and we're basically doing the opposite. We're going to look at areas that are shadowed and try to deepen them, make them darker. So this collarbone here, if I just go a little bit, it doesn't take much. If I just put a little bit of darkness on that collarbone, in conjunction with our dodge, it really makes that collarbone kind of pop and stand out and gives some great three-dimensionality. So what I'm going to do too is we can come down here and kind of darken up the little cleavage area. Maybe just add some contouring around the edge of the breasts and arm. That's going to create a fuller look. We can also come down and just kind of darken up underneath the chest. That's just going to kind of give that more illusion of just like, you know, a nice full chest. And now what I like to do with this is I like to darken up the eyebrows a little bit. They're already pretty dark, but I'm just going to put a little bit of darkness in them around the edges here. I also like to kind of go over the eyeliner and eyeshadow because just kind of makes the eyes pop a bit more. So I'm going to come over a few strokes on the eyeliner. It's going to be very subtle, like that. And then I also like to go over the eyeshadow a bit, just kind of darken up the eyeshadow, just kind of give a more alluring eyes in a sense. If we see, yeah, we can just see that it just kind of makes the eyes pop a little more. We can also darken up the shadow side of the nose if we want. One thing I definitely like doing is I definitely like putting a little bit of a burn or darkening the hairline just around like where the hair and the forehead meet, because what that's going to do is it's going to draw a bit more attention toward the center of the face because we've kind of almost made the face look smaller. I do like to come over here and just kind of darken in the part of the hair. It makes it a little less pronounced, less distracting. You can also come down here at the edges and just kind of darken up, you know, the edge of the face down here in the bottom of the chin area and the jawline, and that's going to create some more definition. And if we look at them together, all of them, you can see that it's very subtle, but just that there has added some great three-dimensionality. Other things we can do with Dodge is we can basically add some highlights and sheen to the hair. This time I'm going to paint with a 5% brush to make it a little harder. And you can just kind of come over here as your Dodge and do little things here. Brighten that up a little bit. And what that's going to do is just kind of give a nice like sheen to the hair. Let me come down here, especially right here where it's being hit by this hair light. Making that look bright. Maybe this little strip down here look cool. Something like that. We could even come in and just do a little bit here. Like so. Okay. We're going to do the eyes separately, but I will just slightly kind of brighten up the eyes a little bit, just like that. You don't want to go too crazy. I mean, you see it quite a lot where you see people with just like crazy white, almost glowing eyes, and I think it looks really ridiculous. Actually, this was way too much because I was doing my 5%. Let me go ahead and erase all that. And let's erase with 100%. Let's erase what we did there on our Dodge. And let's switch to a 2% brush and go back to our brush, 2%, and just kind of brighten up the eyes a little bit. Usually I'll do the eyes on a separate layer, but just for now, I'm just going to do a little bit of brightening. Yeah, just a little bit. Just going to make them pop a bit without making them look like they're glowing and, you know, looking crazy. So this is our before contouring. This is our after contouring. And you can see just by adding a little bit of Dodge and Burn, we've really created some nice depth. And again, at any time, if you feel like we went a bit too far with our contour, we can just lower the opacity. And one more thing that you should be aware of, especially when you're doing any kind of burning, is that a lot of times when you darken things like this, you're going to notice the saturation level changes quite a bit. Look how saturated that area got where I was painting in my burn. Now, if we want to avoid that, we can switch our blend mode into luminosity. And what that's going to do is it's only going to affect the luminosity and not the saturation level. So you see now, see how it's not saturated at all? Where if I go back to normal mode, it got super saturated, super red. Where if I stay on luminosity, it darkened it without it getting overly saturated. So that's one thing you can also do, especially with the burn, is to change that blend mode to luminosity just to make sure that you are not affecting the saturation on the areas that you're trying to darken. So that is that. I think that's pretty good. Okay guys, so that's going to be a short video for this one, just because I want to spend a bit more time on the next part, which is going to be the hair. And then at the end, we'll do some final touch-ups like the eyes, a little bit of liquefaction, and then we will move on to our background replacement and kind of giving it that finishing fine art color grade. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, guys. I just recently hit 500 subscribers, so I'm really thankful for all you guys subscribing, watching my videos, leaving comments. Right now my channel is small enough where if you write a comment or a question, I can get back to you. Sometimes I do miss the notifications, but I try to get back to everybody who writes or comments on my videos, so I really appreciate it, guys. And until then, I will see you in the next video. So as always, thanks for watching. Bye.